This is the art of startup war. And my name is Brian McMahon, your host and sensei. Here is what we know. 98% of startups will fail every single day, and mostly due to reasons outside your control. The Expert Dojo Startup Accelerator, we look to even up the playing field by sitting down with the greatest minds in startup investment right here in our studio in Silicon Beach, where we look to shine a light on your path to success. Now, our guests each week have invested millions of dollars into startups and are the most respected investors in the world. Now, they share all they know with you, the listener. So join us on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, starting off your week winning the war against startup failure. Welcome back. It's Tuesday morning. It is 10 o'clock. It is Brian here from Expert Dojo. I'm with a really good buddy of mine, an amazing entrepreneur who's built a phenomenal business alongside Expert Dojo, with Expert Dojo, as my friend, Mr. Caryl from SmartCSM. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be in the freezer here with you.
In the pretend. It is a freezer. It's just a freezer with a bunch of sound stuff on there.
The old freezer with a bunch of eggshells on the side. It's a little scary, but I'm rolling with it.
But it's no scarier than early stage entrepreneurship.
Nothing scarier than that, especially when you have to tell your wife that you're broke.
Yeah, well, so you and me have been together on that journey, like right from the very beginning. But so we must be mad. Because, or is this a game for kids or is it a game for us? We're like the same age, the same mentality, the same insanity, and we decided both to start businesses. Why?
I think in many ways it's like a gambling addiction. You know, like I have a startup addiction.
A good one, though.
I mean, I think it's good. You know, it's not for everybody. And that's what I try to tell, people, young people, and anybody who asks me. If you're wired that way, then you're wired that way, because it takes so much drive and determination and focus. And you have so many people like sort of mounted against you telling me that's a stupid idea. That'll never work, and you have to fight all that tide. And it just takes a certain personality. Like it's what I know how to do. I think I would just blow my brains out sitting in an office with the fluorescents cooking me to death every day for 25, 30 years.
Did you know it was going to be like this, though?
Yeah, I think every startup I've had, and I've had a few at this point, have been variations of this.
What about the first one?
The first one was tough. I mean, I started a furniture moving company in New York City when I was 18. And at one point, I got kicked out of my house by my parents. I had $10 in my pocket. That's before I started the company. And I was like, what can I do? I can move furniture. And it's kind of embarrassing, but the first week or so I slept in the back of the truck. I had no place to go and I had no money. I made money that first day. And
you were 18. You probably had the best digs in New York.
Was the size of a New York apartment. Sadly, it's a good point. About 50 square feet. It was an old UPS truck, like a old beat up step van, they called it. But so I think that, I think I had a good awareness of what I was getting into, but each one is really different. It's not like starting, they all have different problems and present different challenges, and they have different victories, and you have to hang on to those little victories while you're trying to get to the big victories. And that's the challenge, is to find, when all those forces are against you, to find those little bits of light that you can stare at and you can see, hey, you can't see that light at the end of the tunnel, but I do. And I'm single-minded in my vision, and I'm going to get there whether you think this is a good idea or not.
Right. I mean, and so here's what's really interesting for me. So we've created this entrepreneur's journey around the podcast, right? We're very focused on investment and finding investment and how we find investment and where we find investment. And we like to center everything around that, so everybody listening kind of gets a really good feel for that. But we also want to structure it around the good movie plot, right? So what was the call to adventure? What were the supernatural forces that made you want to do this? Maybe the opposing forces that actually went against you. The beginning of when it actually started to get a little bit good. Who were the mentors that helped you get to that stage? Then moving towards the challenges. Like this is the stage where the goodie is almost going to get beaten, right? And then into the abyss itself. And then out of the abyss on the other side to the transformation, the revelations, and then to creating a great company that obviously you've done this time around. In each of the companies you are in, would you say you followed that trajectory, or how is it different?
No, man, definitely not. each one's like a pinball game. You're like bing, 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 and you have a huge victory, and then you're crushing the feet, and you go sideways, and then you go sideways the other way, and you get it's just they're all totally different. They're so not a predictable journey because they're like it's kind of like pulling it's like pulling a thread of a sweater. You're pulling all these different threads. You don't know where they're going to go. And often in my career, I've done things that just haven't been done before. Like I'm not going into a space that 5 other people did, and I can say, okay, let me reverse engineer what they did and just take the good from their experience and not the bad. I always take the hardest road. Like I'm the guy with one leg. Like I'll climb Mount Everest, no problem. Oxygen? I don't need oxygen. Ha!
Well, you did that with SmartCSM because what you were building with SmartCSM, an entire predictive analysis and alert system for the biggest buildings in the world, from governments all the way down to private institutions, and building it from not existing to actually have it implemented in these cities is an immense task.
And the funny thing is, I'm not even good with power tools. Like I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm not a SAS expert, but I figured this space out very quickly, and I saw the opportunity like plain as day.
How? What happened?
An electrician brought the concept to me. He was having to basically go through and map and trace breaker panels over and over again, which is the act of using radio signals to basically figure out where the copper wires go.
Yeah.
And he would hand in a paper document, and they would lose that paper document within 90 days. And they would hire him again to do it at a cost of like $2,500 each time.
Yeah, mate, look no further than here with our breakers.
It's a mess. Your breakers are ridiculous. Nothing's marked. But that's what's happening in America. And it just seems so black and white and so obvious. The complexity in this is that you're trying to change the way people have worked, basically, since Edison created the bulb.
Right.
They took a piece of paper and they took a pen and they're like, this circuit goes here.
Yeah.
And so you have generations of electricians and electrical engineers that are essentially used to working in paper. There's a movement to digital, and there has been the last few years, but not the revolution it should have had like 10, 15 years ago. It's one of the last bastions, this sort of blue-collar tech space to join the 21st century.
Yeah.
They're still in the late 1800s in many ways.
But they were. But for you to build this, because there was no other real platforms out there, even coming close to what your ambitions were, we're talking about like not just a mind-expansive task on how all of the different things and the applications that you would build, how they would tie into other things that needed to be done then, but also the cash that needed to be put into it. How did you even convince yourself that it was possible for little old you to be able to do it?
I looked at the market for about 9 months. I really studied it hard. I talked to category experts. I talked to electricians. I talked to electrical engineers. I talked to architects. I talked to facility managers. And I took a real hard verbal look at this whole space. Just trying to understand the challenges that people had. And I was really trying to talk myself out of it, which is, I think, what you always have to do as an entrepreneur.
Great
your
advice.
First job is to come up and say, why is this a stupid idea? And when I can't prove to myself that it's a bad idea, and I can't find other people that are doing a really good job of it, to me, that's when it starts to scream opportunity.
Especially when you're saying, hey, why doesn't this exist? And everybody's going, well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose because nobody's done it yet.
Yeah, I mean, they were like, well, we've done it this way for forever. Why would we change? And I was like, oh my God, the possibilities are endless. To us, I look at SmartCSM as like, we're the Google Maps of commercial infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's the whole big
You can't even imagine getting from one side of town to the other side of town today without Waze or Google Maps, right? In the same way that you can't imagine having a 20-story building without having full digital mapping in place, knowing what's going to go wrong in the future.
100%. It made no sense to me. I was like, how is it possible that these multi-$100-million operations can have such a dearth of information about the infrastructure, about all the pipes and the tubing that's behind the walls? It doesn't make sense. And I looked at like the cable TV guy, right? The cable TV person comes over, and it takes about a half hour to actually make the connection on your cable TV. But they're there for an hour and a half because they're trying to find connectivity. They're going up on the roof. They're moving ceiling tiles. And I realized the same thing was happening in facilities. I would watch these electricians try to track down information. Where's this machine? Where's the sequence of operations to restart this machine? Where's the maintenance information about it? And there was like little different tools that did different things, but there was not a platform that could come in. And I realized my opportunity was electrical. You know, the facility is like a human body almost. Like the electrical is the central nervous system, the air conditioning is the lungs, the plumbing's the blood. And I was like, I basically use that analogy. The facility is much like the human body, but it's this machine.
Yeah.
And because they don't understand exactly where all the ports are and the ins and outs and the infrastructure of this machine, they can't really effectively manage their time. And that's what I watched. Tons of wasted time. And I thought, if I could reduce that 25, 30, 35%, 40% of their labor budget back in their operational budget by saving them time and giving this information, that's a unicorn.
Okay, so far you're Batman, the bat lamp is on, Gotham City love you, everything's cool. Opposing forces. Like, money has to be one of them, because this is hundreds of thousands of dollars you have to spend on this.
Millions. It's not, I wish it were hundreds of thousands. And that was one of the big barriers to entry. Fortunately, the first thing we did, which is what's in many ways great about the time we live in, is we were able to build a reasonably inexpensive MVP, or minimum viable product.
Yeah.
It wasn't cheap. We spent a couple $100,000 because it had to do a lot of things. And that allowed us, or let's just put it this way, we thought that would allow us to prove that we had market fit.
Was it a we at this stage, or is it a slightly schizophrenic me?
It was an electrical engine. It was an electrical contractor that brought me the idea, a friend of mine for 25 years, and we talked about it for months and months and months. And I was like, it's got to exist. It didn't exist. And then I did my research, and then we said, okay, let's build an MVP. And we tested the MVP, and then we were done, right? We had sold it to a couple of big companies. We had like pretty good use case scenarios, and we were like, we came out to the investment market. We're like, okay, we're here. Let's start writing checks. And it was like crickets, bro. Tweet, 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 tweet. Like nobody got it. I was like, you got it. You got it totally. You know, when I came to you 2 years ago, you instantly got it, but nobody got it.
I was super desperate, though. You got to bear that in mind.
It was kind of crickety in here,
my
wasn't
life
it?
wasn't, like, there was nothing. My life was at the end.
It was kind of quiet. There weren't a lot of people around.
My wife's like, you got nobody. And then I come home and I go, I got Craig.
Who's that?
And she's like, you got nobody. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. We're so screwed.
Yeah.
But no, we were wrong. It was a brilliant idea.
It was like everywhere I went, it was just like I would lose. Like,
but they must have got it. Like, who's not seriously?
They didn't.
Like,
I swear to God, they didn't get it. I would go to I went to like every pitch competition. It didn't matter how cheeseball the thing was. I was there. Like every night of the week, I was flying to Texas, flying to San Francisco, going to San Jose, up and down the coast. And I would full of energy. I had a great PowerPoint. I had 2 or 3 big clients, including the Salvation Army. And they were like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. And I would lose to the lamest ideas. These people would have the craziest ideas.
So we got this dating app, and what's going to happen is like
it's for one-legged skiers that are dating. There's like 100,000 of them in the world. I was like, what? And I came in 6th, and that guy won.
So I've never seen you not happy or not optimistic. And I mean, you're like me in that way, but it's got to be devastating. I mean, not devastating. It's got to be friggin' hard, right? You have this idea that's going to change the world. You're seeing all of these investors. They don't get it. And there comes a stage where, I mean, you became an overnight success, right? After so much friggin' hard work to get there. But there must be a stage in the middle of all of that hard work where you think, seriously? It would have been okay if it was shit, right? If it was shit, it would have been fine. Because at least you have a come to Jesus moment. At least you have that moment where you think, you know what? My idea is probably not that good. I gave it a really good go. I'll move for the next one. But you were, and I was totally convinced. From the first moment, I was like, yeah, sure, of course I get it. Like, we have no idea if anybody is even going to die today. Like, we don't know what's live, what's dead, what breaker's going where. And definitely if something breaks, like, nobody's going to be alerted. So is this something that's needed? Yeah. So you have a brilliant idea, but you have investors who don't necessarily follow the logic of, oh, it's a brilliant idea, so I'm going to invest in this company. It's a different game.
So I never had that moment where I didn't believe it was a good idea. Definitely not. And I think that's the true entrepreneur is it doesn't matter. Like until you're proven absolutely wrong, you have to just take the bullets and the arrows and rip them out and head forward into the battle. But there were several moments where I was days away from just being crushed like a little bug and having to like crawl under a rock and hide. I mean, I have this one picture of my bank account. It has negative $17. Or maybe it's positive $17, but I had no money. I had a 3-day pay or quit notice, and I got $50,000 from a guy that day. And it was all collapsing, and we had just finished the new software, but we were out of money, and we couldn't get any more investors. And so there's been many moments like that on the journey where it just seemed like there was no way out. I mean, I was literally thinking, I'm going to have to sell my house and go move into my in-laws' basement, which if anybody knows me and my in-laws, that's the end of the road for me. I'll probably be hanging in the backyards
I love the way
that.
you assume that they would let you into their basement.
They'd probably make me live out back with the pigeon with the broken wing. So I think,
I mean, also, you're very fortunate because you have an incredibly supportive wife, which there's not a lot of people who understand this. It's not that wives or husbands of entrepreneurs are like unsupportive if they don't help. Seriously, they kind of got to be nuts in a good way if they do help and if they are supportive, because what we're doing is so extreme.
You have to have a support network, whether that's your family or your wife or a combination of it. Because if I went home and got beat up the way I get beat up out there, and don't get me wrong, my wife,
awesome.
She could give it to me pretty hard. And there's like, I couldn't bring her to that film about McDonald's, the guy, I couldn't bring her there because there's a scene where he has to explain to her that he's mortgaged the house, which I totally did. And she's like, I knew if she saw that, she'd have flashbacks and lose her mind. So I was like, I made a rule. I was like, you cannot see that film. But yeah, I mean, my wife is 99% of the time has my back. And you have to have that. First of all, nobody does it alone. It's all about mentors.
It is.
There's so many people on the journey.
Who are they? Tell me, who are they and what do they do?
There's so many. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But, there's critical people like John Morris, the founder of Tech Coast Angels. I just happened to get into a Visage group that he was managing and, committed 1 day a month for about 16 months. And I was able to really, spend a lot of quality time with a heavy player that really knew the game for 40 years, in many ways invented parts of the game.
Yeah, powerful.
So that was big. Probably my initial investors who really surprised me. Like I was trying to do a friends and family round and raise $1 million, and I was able to raise 20.
Yeah.
20,000, and that was like 4 of my buddies or 25,000. They each put in like $5,000.
Yeah.
And that was just nothing, and so one of my, an investor that I met at a party, put in $100,000 and they said, look, we want you to focus on this for 6 months.
How did you convince? I mean, did you convince
They just
the
were like
investor,
you
or
and me. They got it.
Yeah.
They were like, it was a husband and wife, and the husband was like, I totally understand this idea. It makes complete sense. And he knew me pretty well at that point. And he's like, and I believe that you can pull this off. He just believed in me. And that's what mentors do.
Yeah.
If you look at my background, there's no way I should have done this. Just like I shouldn't have done my last project, which was a robotic pet in the dementia market for Hasbro. I don't have that background. And he saw something in me that he saw the passion. And I think that's what really, obviously an entrepreneur has to be really bright and really capable, but you have to have that passion because that's what people buy into. That's the excitement where they're like, I want to be on the ride with you, man. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And so it's people
so
like
true.
that.
I'm excited. What the hell?
And the thing is, you never know where people are going to come from. And so, I have found investors, going to church services. Like, I went to church, and I'm Jewish one time to get an investor, And I stalked him. Like, I moved closer pew by pew every Sunday. By the 4th Sunday, I was like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe you're really rich, and I'm an investor. I'm looking for an investor. How could that be? Fate brought us together, So I think you have to find people.
It's that combination of everything where you're never letting people see, I don't want to say what the rejection does, but it's not even real rejection in their eyes because they're waiting for 1 of 100, which is their one perfect entrepreneur to come through. But from our perspective, we pitch 150 people. It's like, you know what? I could have actually been spending that time focused on my business. But when you look back, at least what I've seen, is actually each one of those relationships is important in their own strange way.
You learn from each one, and each one, I think, has the ability to potentially connect you to the next
Mate,
one.
because I'm thinking specifically of the party that we had here when you were killing it. Like, you became this overnight success. Everybody wanted to invest in. You oversubscribed your round twice. Right, we started off, I think, looking for 750, and it's like, let's go for 1.25.
Then a million
1.5. Right, we went all the way up, and I remember the one investor who walked in here, and he said, "Here's a check." And he's a big investor here in LA, and he said, "Here's a check. I need to hear from 3 trusted people that an entrepreneur is worth an investment, and I've heard from my 3 trusted people. Here it is." Right, big guy. And you could argue that every single thing that you had done before that moment was absolutely imperative for that and everything around it to be happening at that time.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put in the work, and I look at like all my experiences, my victories and my failures throughout the 3 decades I've been at this, as all preparing me for this. When I look at the skill set that I've developed to navigate this world and raise this money and hire all these people and close all these big corporations like Toyota and United Airlines, I think that it's all contributed. And so I never look at, like with SmartCSM, when somebody would reject my pitch, and I would go back, sit in my car and kind of scratch my head and get bummed for a little bit. But I just was like, lick my wounds. I got up.
I've never seen you down. Like, never.
And I think you have to be prepared to talk to 100 investors to get one. And that one may put $5,000 in, It's not like they're going to put $1 million in. And so if you're looking for, $1 million or even $100,000, you better be prepared to talk to 500 to 1,000 people. And I mean, like, okay, the elevator door opens, Mr. Big walks in. You got 15 seconds to get this guy interested. You just never know. And that's, each one of those teaches you about people, each environment,
So if $17 was the lowest point where you just were at that stage where you needed to have something happen and you acted as if you had $17 million in your account, so everybody continues to believe in you, talk to me about how the transformation happened from there, right?
Well,
you built your software. You've now got money being invested into the company. Software is ready. You're getting client after client after client. That's the funny thing, is like through that whole process, it must have even been more frustrating that you're just getting more and more of these guys in. But talk to me about how it moved into the place it's got to today.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is you never can let them see you sweat. No matter what, whether you're selling somebody or you're getting an investor.
It's hard though, isn't it?
You got to be.
Because you're shitting yourself.
You got to be on 11.
Go on,
everything's great.
Go
we're rocking. We're killing it. You have to believe in yourself so much.
But he's walking to the table and you're thinking, go on, take the checkbook out. Go on.
And you're like, I got $17 in my account. Like, I'm looking at this guy like he's a big T-bone steak with steam coming off the top of him because I haven't eaten in like a week. And I got to tell him how great it is, and I don't really need his money, but no, I don't. Not that approach, but
you're through that, and now
okay.
you've got the companies coming through, and it's
all
really
hard.
well.
That's the thing; it never lets up. It's just a different kind of hard. Like selling big brands is really hard.
I agree.
We're not Microsoft, we're not Oracle. Okay. We haven't been around for 20 years. We're SmartCSM in Torrance, California. And we're basically explaining to these gigantic brands that we're going to solve a huge problem for them. And that is not an easy sell. That is complicated. But they understand that we are solving a big problem, and they understand our size, and they're willing to get on the train with us because they believe it, and they deploy it, and it works. And so it's like each one is a little victory that we can hold up and share with people, and show videos of facility managers talking about why they like it, and provide case studies to people. And that's where the rubber meets the road at the end of the day. Are you making a big impact? Are you doing what your value proposition says it's going to do? And that's, ultimately that's the great barometer of whether you be successple or not. Does it work? Does it work the way you tell people? Is the software, up all the time? Are you having technical problems? Are you, just any one of those in the SaaS space at least can derail you in a major way. People start having an emergency and trying to get on the system and it's down. That's like the kiss of death.
Yeah.
Your technology has to be great.
And May, I'm so proud and happy to have you as a friend and have you as part of the dojo. And I will layer one thing on that we haven't quite touched on yet. But as we move towards from the difficult times, from getting the mentoring and the help, and then towards trying to raise the money and then receiving the money and building, what I noticed that you did unbelievably well was built a team of people around you who made up for all of the skill gaps to get you to the next place. Like that's, for me, your single most skill, above the optimism, above the showmanship, above the great business person you are, or a guy who can build the software that you have. You immediately went out and started filling your COOs, people to help you with investment, the team, the selling people within the team. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's almost it's that butterfly effect, right? When you start moving from the caterpillar and say, if I'm going to become a multi-$100 million company, I need to build an incredible team of people who are actually going to be able to execute.
Yeah, I mean, you have to enroll people in your vision, and you have to bring people that complement you, whether they're your weak spots or whatever it is. And I think that's something I do very well, is connect with people. And, I see the best in them. And look, we all have personality quirks. Can you deal with that person's personality quirk? Because we're not paying market. We're paying probably 50% of market. So people are coming on board because they see the vision and they buy in as me as a leader and the concept and the team we're putting together. And that's when all the oars are in the water. That's when the collective energy of the group is just like a locomotive train. And that's right where we are right now. We're on fire. We're closing big deals. We're just at a trade show. We got probably 30, 40 new companies that'll be coming on in the next 4 or 5 months. But it's a collective effort, and it's really about, understanding the different strong suits you'll need to be successful, and not where you are today, but where you want to be in 90 days, where you want to be 180 days. We pretty much everything we do is like a 36-month roadmap with a really heavy detail for the next 18 months. So we're thinking, I'm always thinking 6 months. Who do I need? What do I need in a year? So one of the most important hires I did right away was a COO. That was employee number 2 to help me build out the infrastructure of the business, but create an environment where I could do what I do best, which is sell and create big distribution relationships and marketing relationships, and not get tied down in the minutia of the compliance. The legal compliance alone can take hours, a month. I mean, each one of these is a giant time suck, and that's where you have to really be careful how you spend your money. I choose to spend a lot of money on legal to get it taken care of, to keep a clean entity. So when we do go to Series A, we're super organized. Everything's on Carta, and there's no issues. The DD is super quick. But it's choices you make.
So how does it change? Because you've built that team, you've built those great people around you, you've gone through the software that you've built, you've got all of the new clients on board, you're going to be moving to the next raise. And in your space, like the quicker the raises come, the bigger the company becomes. How do you see the challenges of the next raise as different to the last investment raise that you did?
Well, we're going to do this one quick. The last one.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we're going to hammer down.
Fuck around.
We're going to do this one in 2 months. The last one took 9 months, but it's different momentum.
How many celebration parties did we do?
We celebrated a lot
before we even had a celebration.
My kidneys hurt from all that celebrating. I think one of the differences is we know exactly how we're going to deploy it now. We didn't have the infrastructure set up that we do now when we did the last round. And so much of what we had to spend our money and our time on for the first few months was building out HubSpot, bringing in the right marketing folks, like setting up this whole social media ecosystem around telling the story, connecting with these building engineers and facility managers and contractors who are, a unique group of people to connect with. They're not influencers. They're not any of the stuff that you normally see in the social media space. So you have to figure out, whether it's LinkedIn or sending them literally mailers.
I was going to say
old school.
A letter.
We're doing a letter right now that's like a panel schedule on one side. It's a really messy panel schedule. And on the other side, it's our digital, readout of our software. Screen grab. It's beautiful. But, when was the last time anybody sent out mail? But this is like a group that responds to it. It's a bunch of 60-year-old facility managers out there, who are hanging onto their paper, don't touch my paper! So, yeah,
So-
I mean, this. So the answer. Sorry, I got off
So
target.
success leaves clues. And as you start growing and you start achieving what you promise you're going to achieve, it becomes a lot easier as you go forward, right?
Look, and you got to deliver for investors. You got to say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then you got to do it. Or you got to say, this is what we're going to do, but we didn't do it as well as we thought, but we got halfway there. And they'll accept that as long as your trajectory is on target. And that's
Don't lie to him.
never lie to them. If you have bad news, get ahead of it. Use your investors too as a sounding board.
Yeah.
Talk to them, enroll them in your success, and you constantly have to enroll them because these are busy people doing a lot of things. If they're giving you $50,000, they're probably giving 10 other people $50,000, and they probably have a whole other life and business unrelated to those 10 investments. So you have a sliver of their time, and if they sense any BS or any inconsistencies, that's
You
the
lose
kiss
them.
of death for them. You lose them. They
I
just
like
write
that.
it off. But, and I think and that's why you want to always enroll them here. Here's what we do. I send a newsletter every 60 days, cash in the bank, wins, losses, help. We need help with this. Here's the 10,000-foot view of the company. None of my investors would tell you they're out of touch with their investment regarding SmartCSM. They all feel like, hey, I got my fingers on the pulse. I'm very available. They call me, I call them right back, and I give them, the quick 10, 15 minutes, audible.
I love that.
I think it's critical.
Parting advice for all entrepreneurs starting out, especially those starting out the very first time, and they want to become a smart CSM, which I say right here and now in front
Go
of
do
everyone.
something different. Don't compete with me. I don't need any more competition.
No, let me. If you want to compete with Greg, no, for real. They're starting out. They want to start a company. They obviously have heard that it's easy peasy and it's going to be simple and there's no problems. 1 minute on what they should do.
Don't be somebody that creates a solution looking for a problem. That's probably the most important thing is look for a problem where you can provide the solution, which may sound like a simple thing to say, but it's really a big deal. Really, be aware of your environment. Simple things are still available to be created if you see the need. It could be a little piece of plastic around a shoelace, bad example, but look at the wheels on a suitcase. Like there's 4 wheels on a suitcase. Somebody just came up with that idea 4 or 5 years ago, and now everybody has it. There's opportunity everywhere around us 24/7. You just have to be aware and always be looking and listening and smelling and listening to what people are complaining about, and that's how I would go about it.
You're saying find something that makes a difference.
Find a problem and figure out a way to solve it, whatever that might be. It could be there's a myriad of things that you can address, but it's really critical to understand the problem and how you can fix it.
And for anybody looking to follow Smart CSM, where's it going to be in a couple of years' time?
In a couple of years' time, I think we'll have thousands of clients. I think we'll be a pretty ubiquitous platform. I think it'll be in the engineering specs and the architectural specs, meaning that, general contractors will be, forced to of course, we're going to deliver the building plans on Smart CSM. Why wouldn't we? We look at where Bluebeam is now, and that's where we are going to be in 3-4 years, where it's just, it's part of the lexicon.
Yeah, baby.
Smart CSM.
That's where we're going to leave it.
Just another tool in your tool belt.
We're going to leave it. Craig, you're a great buddy, mate. You've achieved an unbelievable amount. Congratulations on it all. And it's been great having you part of the dojo.
You're the best. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for joining us. If you know any other entrepreneur equally ambitious as you, then share this podcast by paying it forward to other entrepreneurs who are building your own army. Now, as always, our website, expertdojo.com, is packed with information to help you grow your business, find investment, and train for victory. We also walk our talk and invest in startups every year in our accelerator here in Silicon Beach. You can always reach out to me at brian@expertdojo.com, and I look forward to being back here again at our regular time next Tuesday, 10 a.m. with another of the world's top investors, helping you win the war against startup failure.